Hello and welcome to another Factorio tutorial for beginners here. I'm Xterminator and thank you for joining me. And today we are going to be covering early game and mid game combat. Now, late game combat, we're going to be covering in a separate video, potentially in a different tutorial playlist. This playlist that this video and the ones before it fall into are very much meant for newer players, people who are just coming into the game, especially since there are a lot of new players with 1.0 having released, and hopefully some new players finding my channel as well and finding this helpful. So we're going to be focusing on early and mid-game combat strategies, tactics, some tips, and ways you can approach it. I know it can be difficult. Of course, you can play with the enemies completely off. You can play with them on peaceful mode, which means that basically they will not attack you until you attack them. And all these are very viable, perfectly acceptable options. But if you do choose to play with the enemies on, then it may be a little hard at first to, combat them and destroy them or push them out or defend against them. And we're going to try to cover that here. And first off, I want to just touch on the fact that, briefly touch on the fact that when enemies attack your base, this is caused by your pollution from your factory generating pollution. It's when the pollution actually hits the bases. I will touch on this much more deeply in a fundamentals tutorial, which is another tutorial playlist on my channel, and we'll go into more about that. But just kind of as a general thing, you shouldn't ever, theoretically, you should never be attacked if there are no bases, no enemy bases within your pollution cloud. So that's what actually causes attacks. Now, defending is fairly straightforward, I would say. Defending is, as simple as placing some turrets, around the main areas, entry areas into your base and the most vulnerable structures and such. And this is primarily focused on actual combat and offensive strategies, because this is where it becomes a lot more tricky, and there's actually more options available to you. So early game, I'm going to show you kind of two different things you can do, and one is very, very early game. So one of them is basically as early as just having a gun here. A submachine gun is what we're going to say, because I would say that it's never really appropriate to push out and attack a base before you even have a submachine gun. Trying to do it with a pistol is probably going to result in you dying. It's gonna be a death wish. So I would say definitely having a machine gun. I have piercing ammo here. You can do this with normal ammunition. If I just go ahead and just give ourselves a command here really quick to give myself some ammunition, just purely for demonstration purposes here. It hasn't made it any more powerful or anything. It just allowed me to get some. I will show you this with some normal ammunition, and it will be quite difficult. In fact, we probably will not succeed. We'll probably have to back away here and potentially die. And also, I would suggest having armor. At the very least, having light armor. So if we go to engage his base, there are 3 spawners, and there's a couple worms here. So this, even with piercing ammunition, would be a little bit ambitious, but I do think we could do it, even without turrets. So I'm going to just try this with normal ammo and see how far we can get. So the approach I'm going to take is I'm just going to kind of run forward. I'm going to prioritize the biters themselves, and I'm going to hold space, which will automatically target enemies that are near me, and I'm mousing over, and I'm just going to try to target the biters with that. Because if I just focus the base right away, I will get surrounded and die. So you want to kill the enemies that have already spawned here, and then focus the bases, and then change your focus to the enemies as they spawn. And here we go. So here's a good example. As you can see, I am killing them, but the normal ammunition is really not super sufficient. I'm taking quite a large amount of damage here, and if we were to approach this, we could do this. It would be significantly slower than we would probably like, than would be ideal. You're seeing I'm dodging most of these worm artillery shots here. This is something else to keep into account. If you are attacking a base with the worms, their shots are predictive. A long time ago, they actually used to be homing, which was significantly harder, as you might imagine. They're predictive now, so you can certainly dodge them, but something to keep in mind, what you've seen happen here is this spit, this poison, stays on the ground for a good while after it's shot. And if you step on it, it slows you down and damages you. So even if you dodge those shots, if you move around a lot, you're going to, step in this and take damage. And I'm trying to stay out of range. So one thing you can do is when you mouse over a base, you'll notice it has a red circle around it. This means I'm out of range. As soon as this becomes this green circle, it means I'm in range. And there was that case there where I was actually able to shoot this base without the worms being in range of me. And we certainly were at a point here where we could take out this base just purely with this ammunition. It would be quite slow. To show you in contrast, if we had unlocked, if at this point you had unlocked piercing rounds, as well as, made them, of course, and maybe even a bullet damage research, this would be significantly easier. You'll also notice we've taken some damage. A strategy you can use right off the bat, because there's no research required for this, is fish. Take a fish and left click, it will heal you. You can go up to any water source, you see the fish here, and you right click them to collect them, and it will give you 5 fish. And then you pick it up in your hand, and if you're low on health, you left click and it will heal some health for you. I can do it when I'm not low on health and will just waste the fish, but that's something that can actually help you through most stages of the game. It's the only actual healing source, active healing. You do have some passive healing, as you saw, but that's the only active healing. And you'll notice I am destroying this quite a bit quicker than I was before, and I found a sweet spot right here where I can shoot the base without the worms hitting me. And this just requires a little tiptoeing around, just kind of, again, focus the biters and then slowly move in until you can find a location where you're in range, like right here. So I'm right at the edge of the range, and these are small worms, which means that their range is not as great as mine. Medium worms and above will be able to outrange me at this point, but the small worms, I can shoot this from without, from outside their range, and I can then shoot them. I could also just leave them. Worms won't create expansions themselves. They will not expand territory. That is only the biters. So if there's worms left and you don't feel confident enough to deal with them and you've just killed the spawners and the biters there, there's not a lot of harm in leaving them. You may eventually need to clear them out as you expand, but if you're not confident with that right away, you can wait until you have better gear. So you saw right there, what I did is I really just, again, it was very important that I focused the biters and I pulled back. Had I stood here and taken pot shots from these worms while killing that initial wave of biters, I definitely would have died. You can see the trail here where I pulled them back. And this whole that entire time I was just holding the space bar because it just auto targets them. And then I moved forward. I did take quite a bit of worm shots, but again, they're predictive. So if you stand still, you can see their shot flying through the air and you can move, or if you're running one way, they'll predict where you're going to be at like X seconds from then, or X ticks from that point, and you can, just run this way and then run that way, and their shot will totally miss. Again, though, you do have to be very careful of the stuff on the ground. Now, the second thing I want to show you is pushing with turrets. So if you've unlocked turrets, which should be fairly easy, it's a very cheap research here at just being 10 science packs, you can use a far more efficient, quicker, and safer method of pushing. And this one, though, is a bit more complicated. So I'm clearing my slots here just so I can rearrange a few things. This is a fair bit more complicated, but it's much better. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put our turrets on our hotbar. So the hotbar is just something that can easily pull things from your inventory without you having to actually open your inventory. Just using the number keys 1 through 0, so 1 through 9 and then plus 0 here, as if it were 10. And this will quickly just pull up, this is a reference basically to inside your inventory. And this allows us to easily access these. The second thing we're going to want here, you can also do this by clicking on it and selecting the item. And this is now a reference to all the ammunition in my inventory. And what we're going to do is a combination of some hotkeys. And this is going to allow us to quite quickly place down the turrets and put ammo in them. and they will make very, very quick work of these bases. I'm going to use normal ammo just to show you the effectiveness it can have even with that. With piercing ammunition, it will completely shred bases all the way up to well into mid-game. I would say even into early late game. This is a very, very viable strategy. Even late game, it's a viable strategy with laser turrets. You can do it with gun turrets. It's a bit more tedious, and you do need a lot of physical damage researches. But what we're going to do in this particular case is, so we have the hotkeys 1 and 2 to pull these up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk you through the hotkeys, and then I'm going to do it and try to say it while I do it. So we're going to hit 1 to pull this up. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to hold left click and drag once we get close enough, and this will just place them. I'm not going to left click 4 times. I'm just going to hold left click and move and drag my mouse, and this will just place them in front of me. And then after they're placed, I'm going to quickly hit 2 to switch to my ammo, and I'm going to hold control, left control, and I'm going to right click while I'm holding control. I'm going to hold right click and drag across the turrets. Okay, so hold left control and then hold right click and drag over the turrets with the ammo selected. And what this is going to do, this is going to place half of what I'm holding ammunition wise into each turret. And of course, as it goes down the line of turrets, it will decrease because it's having it each time, but it should be fine. The more ammo you have, the better in this case. And this will work. This will just completely eliminate these bases, no problem. So I am going, now again, same strategy as here though. Even with this strategy, I like to walk up and, you know, aggro these groups, this group of initially spawned biters like this, and kill them, and then do the turrets, because it gets a bit overwhelming even once you have all the hotkeys down to run up when they're already spawned. So I'm going to do this. Press 1, press 2, hold control, and hold right click and drag. And then my job at this point is to just clear the biters out as they spawn. And there we go. Easy. We took minimal amount of damage. This turret ran out of ammo for the reason I explained earlier. You can see it's significantly less as we go down the line. Now, the reason that I am here, that my job is to clear out the biters, is because a turret, once turrets lock onto a target, they will not change their target until the thing they're shooting is dead. So if you don't kill the biters yourself, what can happen is the turrets will start shooting a base, especially if it's a bit slower here, like it was with the normal ammunition. And the biters will keep spawning, and the turrets will not refocus them, so the biters will just start killing your turrets while they do nothing about it because they're focused on the base or worm or whatever else they were shooting. So it's your job then at this point, using this strategy, to kill the biters that spawn. And that was significantly quicker and way less dangerous. Now, again, if you're using piercing ammunition, the base will die just even quicker. And I would say that this, guys, is pretty much the, pretty much encapsulates the early game combat. This is pushing without turrets and with basic ammo and with piercing ammo, and pushing with turrets with basic ammo and piercing ammo works exactly the same, except even better. I don't think I really need a demonstration for that. It will just be, just way quicker. Almost twice as fast as that, because it does almost twice as much damage. So this is early game combat. Now let's switch to another save here to show you some mid-game combat options. Mid-game there are several options at your disposal here. I call this late game. I mislabeled it. This is actually mid-game. I just typed it incorrectly. So we're on a save here. We're actually on my 1.0 tutorial Let's Play save, which a lot of you should be familiar with. If you're not, you can check out that series. And we are standing by a vehicle here, being the tank. Okay. Now, this is a fair farther into the game. We have probably some medium worms in here. We have definitely medium biters. We may have medium spitters. We have spitters in general, which are kind of the mobile worms. They work pretty much just the same as worms, but they are units and they move. And more spawners per base. Okay, so the turret strategy I showed you just a second ago will definitely work. I would say it's very important, though, that you have piercing ammo then at that point, and also probably quite a few bullet damage upgrades, or if you happen to be at laser turrets, you can push with that as well. And to kind of give a idea of what mid game might be, I am currently on the fourth science pack, or sorry, fifth. I miscounted. I'm on the fifth science pack in the game. My pollution kind of looks about like this. It's been 10 hours into the game. So this is kind of just what I would consider mid-game combat. So you have multiple options now at this point. You have the turret pushing option. You have, I would not suggest doing this without some sort of turret or vehicle assistance. I would say doing this just by hand with a gun is not a good idea at all at this stage. You have a tank. You also have cars. I would say a car is not a very good idea. The tank is much more durable. And also, because it's durable, it has the extra ability, which I'm going to show you, which is actually extremely useful, to just literally ram into bases and worms and destroy them on impact. And if you combine this with shooting, this is actually extremely effective. To mix in with this also, depending what research paths you choose, you likely will have grenades and probably poison capsules. You may have combat, you may have defender capsules. That's maybe less likely because I just specifically went down this path for this playthrough. And then you'll have tank shells, I'd imagine, because that, I believe, is unlocked with the tank. I don't use these very much, to be completely honest. I find them a bit tedious to use, but I will show them for you here nonetheless. I do think the explosive shells are a fair bit better. And we can just put them here. We have some coal in here. And you can switch weapons by hitting tab. So what we're going to do is we're going to drive up, and this does have quite a large range. It has a range of 30. So we're going to drive up here, and you can see it's green, so I can hit this, and I'm going to just hit C or space, and well, it's green as if you could hit it. I guess not. It only goes to here. So that's part of why I think it's tedious, is because it seems like you actually can hit something when you can't. Now this does one-shot bases. One issue with this, I'm going to switch weapons here, is that it will hit biters and collide with them. So if biters are in the way of your shot, you won't actually end up hitting the base with a worm, which can be a bit troublesome sometimes. At this point, I'm just holding space, and now I'm going to show you, you can just ram bases and worms, and it will destroy them on impact. Keeping in mind, though, that this will damage your tank. Some of the damage I'm taking right now is just from running into the spawners and the worms. And as you can see, there were quite a few worms, quite a few spawners, and we've taken maybe a third damage, maybe only a fourth damage. This tank does have 2,000 health, so you can see how effective that is. Now, the tank shells were quite good. Don't get me wrong. I just think that they are a bit tedious to use in the grand scheme of things. But you can combine them. It's very easy to just switch weapons, as you saw, by hitting tab. Now, the other things you have at your disposal are grenades, as well as poison capsules. Grenades, I don't really find particularly effective for combat. I actually find them most effective for clearing trees. Normal grenades, that is. Cluster grenades, which you'll unlock later on, I would still consider those potentially mid-game, maybe like late mid-game, like the later end of mid-game. Cluster grenades I find extremely effective in combat. And they work just like grenades, except they shoot out clusters of damage when they land and do a lot more damage. And it can be really quite a significant amount here. I will show you grenades. I don't think, like I said, I don't think they're that great. Poison capsules are interesting, and they can actually be very, very useful. Because how poison capsules work is they will damage biters, spitters, so they'll damage mobile units. They will also damage worms. They will not damage spawners, however. So you don't go in expecting this to damage spawners, but where this is particularly useful is worms, because you can take this and you can see the range at which I can throw this. So if I throw it at the edge here, it's then going to create a cloud which expands out past this, because it also has a radius it does damage in. And you can just throw this on the worms and it will do damage over time. without you having to ever get in there, and you can just wait for it to kill them and then move in. So this is kind of, this is something you can do kind of beforehand to just eliminate, the worms. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to hop in my tank, and I'm going to use these. So you just take them out, and they're in your mouse. You left click to throw them. I'm going to purposely not kill the worms here. I'm going to throw these, in the middle, and you can see the cloud is creating, and I'm just going to let it sit there. You could do this, of course, without a tank. It's just easier to demonstrate it in this case. And you can see all the worms are dead. Again, it does not damage the spawners. It is damaging the enemies pretty well, in fact. And just 2 of them completely demolished all the worms that were here. One of them actually potentially could have. One thing to keep in mind is if you use like one and it's not quite enough, worms and spawners will heal over time. So you maybe want to throw an extra just to be doubly safe that you do kill them. Otherwise, they'll start healing back up. So that can be really effective because now we've just completely eliminated the worms, which makes pushing this significantly easier, whether you're in a tank or not. And I will show you some grenades here. Maybe I will be surprised and they're more effective than I anticipated. As you can see, now very much damage to enemies, to biters and spitters, especially spitters. They can do pretty well. Against bases, though, I think that they're pretty ineffective. I prefer to just ram the base or use tank shells. I'll show you these tank shells here. So the normal ones, looks like they take probably about 2 hits. And they do actually pierce in some cases. So, you can see that this is, it is destroying the bases. But at this point, I probably could have just killed them all by just ramming them like this. But if you prefer the strategy and feel safer just driving kind of on the outskirts and shooting the tank shells, that is very viable. Again, do just keep in mind that they will collide with the biters, so they can kind of get in your way there. And then the other option is capsules. So defender capsules are pretty interesting. They're little guys here. They work just like a poison capsule with how you throw them. You throw them out, and they will just follow you around. And these particular ones will last for 45 seconds, and they will just shoot anything that comes in range. And these do just normal damage. They use bullets. They do have unlimited ammunition, though. There is a higher tier version, which is definitely late game. There's also a slightly different version, which is distractor capsules. We've not unlocked those yet. I would consider distractor capsules to potentially be like early late game. You can get them mid game. They are quite a bit more expensive to make, and they shoot lasers. And instead of following you, you throw them out, much like you do the poison capsules, and they will sit where you throw them. So you can throw, they're distractors, as the name says, and they will just kind of act as a distraction. They can do quite a bit of damage as well, but as they distract, then you can move in and, destroy things as you like. And I think that mostly covers it. Of course, better armor. As you go through the game, you will get heavy armor. I would say heavy armor is like very early mid game. You should definitely be having heavy armor by like the very start of, a general mid game, even early game potentially, depending how quickly you tech up to steel. And then modular armor, which is what I'm on, is certainly mid game. You just need red circuits, which if you're new to the game, you may not know what this is. These advanced circuits, but I've had this for quite a while, so you will have this definitely mid game, even if you're playing slower than I have. There are the options of shotguns. Shotguns are pretty good. Combat shotgun is definitely better for mid game. The normal shotgun is okay for early game. I personally just don't find it great. It is quite good against bases. It can actually kill bases quicker than shooting your submachine gun, but then it's kind of hard to kill the biters when they attack you because you have to aim quite well, and it shoots pretty slowly. So then switching back between weapons, I prefer to just stick with the one weapon, but it's a personal preference. They can be quite good. The combat shotgun, particularly once you get piercing ammunition, which is a bit later down the road. This is definitely late gaming. This requires the latest craftable science pack here. Then this can become quite good. And cluster grenades, I said, are probably like late game-ish because they're in that same tech research. So there you go. Just to recap, guys, early game, is you can just push with a gun. It's slow. It can be effective. You just have to be a little careful. Definitely doesn't hurt to pack some fish. Just be strategic. Pull the biters out. Kill them. Move in. Try to stay out of the range. Step back and forth if there's some worms. A more effective, very quick strategy is turrets. Significantly safer, and that will carry you through even into late game. Obviously teching up ammo and maybe transitioning to laser turrets as you go. But that strategy with the turrets will just work pretty much all the way into late game. It does get a little boring after a while. And then mid game, I would say your go-to in mid game is going to be the turret option or a tank. A tank is very, very effective mid game when you still have medium biters, medium spitters, up to medium worms, maybe a big worm here and there. The tank is super effective, very durable. You can just ram stuff. Do just keep an eye on your health there. Really important to keep an eye on that. Also very important to not get surrounded. I wasn't really in danger of that here because the bases weren't too dense and huge. But if you do get surrounded and slowed down, then you're in trouble because then it can be really hard to start moving again. If you keep moving, you shouldn't really have much of a problem. This can use a flamethrower, which I think is pretty ineffective towards structures, bases, and worms. It can be very effective to biters. If you have just a train of enemies following you or just a bunch in front of you, you can just roast them with the flamethrower. You'll be good to go. I didn't really show it again because I'm personally I like to have the least amount of confusion and button presses. So I like, I don't like switching between 2-3 different weapons in the middle of combat. If you're just really good with that type of thing, flamethrower can be great, but you probably will have to switch it unless you're just doing the ramming strategy maybe, and then just flamethrower to kill the biters. And there we go. Upgrade your armors as you go. Poison capsules, extremely effective for worms, and also, mobile enemies. Grenades, decent against immobile enemies, not very good at all against structures. And then you have your defender capsules, which are okay. If you just have a couple medium biters and then mostly just small stuff, they can be quite good. Once you start getting like a lot of medium biters, medium spitters, lots of medium worms, I find them to not be very great unless you've just gone absolutely crazy with the physical damage upgrades. And even so, I have 3 upgrades, and I would still consider them not super great. They can be helpful. They're certainly helpful, but I would put your focus into the other things I mentioned. And there we go, guys. So late game will be a different tutorial. That's just, there's so many different options. It seemed like there were a lot of options here, but late game, I mean, there's a lot of different stuff you can do in late game for combat. And I think that just deserves its own tutorial. So I'm going to call it here before we lose an outpost. I hope you found this helpful. I know it was a bit long, but I did want to try to be thorough and, very descriptive to try to help you guys out. If there's something you feel I forgot, or maybe you have a strategy for combat that, is more effective than I think it is, or that I didn't cover at all, do leave it down in the comments. I'd really be interested to know. And if you did find this helpful, feel free to, a like is much appreciated, because it helps other people find the video and hopefully find it helpful as well. And if you're new to the game, I hope this helps you combat the enemies a bit better, and I hope you're having a great time with the game. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe if you aren't already, to keep up with all the content I'm putting out for Factorio 1.0, and leave your thoughts and such below. Until next time, guys, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.